Hello. Last week I released this pattern called Capri, and it starts down here with just one stitch, and then I knit this center triangle first, and then I pick up stitches along the edge of the center triangle and knit this lace border from the top down. So the triangular section is worked from the bottom up, and the lace is worked from the top down. So I start down here with just one stitch, and then I do a yarn over at the beginning of every row to gradually increase. So I increase by one stitch every row, and then at the end I have these loopy I have like a loopy edging, which I then pick up stitches into, which makes it really easy to pick up stitches. So I'm now going to show you how I do that. So you need needles and yarn if you're going to follow along. Cast on one stitch. So I'm just going to do a slip knot. So a slip knot is just a knot that can be adjusted. Most cast on methods usually start with a slip knot. So I do it by folding the yarn over itself to create like a loop, and then I pull another loop through the first loop and then tighten it, and then I adjust it. Okay, so I've got one stitch on my needle, and that's all I need. Having a stitch marker, a removable stitch marker like this, like a padlock one, is quite useful as well. But you can use like a piece of yarn or something instead. So I've got one stitch. I'm going to increase, so I'm going to do a yarn over the continental way. Yarn over is the same as yarn forward. All I do is I put my needle under the yarn like that, then I use my finger to hold it so it doesn't slip up, and then I knit one stitch. So now I've got two stitches. Now I'm going to put, before I go any further, I'm going to put a marker in that stitch that I cast on. Just so when I come to the end, I'm going to pick up a stitch in that first stitch. I will know where that is. Hang on, there we go. And then I turn, so I got two stitches. If you knit the English way, don't worry, I will show you how to do that in a minute. So row 2, yarn over, so I have continental way, take the right needle underneath the yarn, hold on with my right finger to stop it sliding off, and then I knit first stitch and the second stitch, and I got 3 stitches. 2, 3, okay. Now this is all in garter stitch, so you're knitting every row. So one more time. So needle under, hold on with that finger, and then I'm knitting 3. And turn, needle under, hold on with my right finger to stop it sliding around, and then I knit those stitches. So I got 2, 4, 5 stitches. Right, so let's have a look at how to do it the English way. So now bear in mind that I do not normally knit the English way, I knit continental, and I am rubbish at knitting the English way, so do bear with me. So to start off, you want a yarn, you basically want to loop over your right needle before you knit the first stitch that's on your left needle. So if I hold the needle behind the yarn like that, so I have the yarn in front, then I can go into the next stitch, the first stitch, and knit it. And then I get, you can see I get like a loop and the first stitch. So I'm just going to knit the next of the row the continental way, because I'm much quicker that way. So next row English way, so yarn in my right hand, hold the yarn in front of my right needle. Let's see if I can do this. Go into the first stitch basically with the yarn in front, and then knit that stitch, and then you can see here I got my yarn over and I got the first knit stitch. I'm going to just knit the rest of it the continental way. As you can see, I'm much better at continental knitting than I am at English knitting. By the way, if you're interested in continental knitting, I do an online course. I also teach it in yarn shops. I'll be teaching it at Spinny Yarn this autumn, that's in Bobby Tracy in Devon. I also teach it as an online class, which you can take at any time. So, one more time, the continental way. So I hold the yarn, so I'm ready to knit. I take the right needle under, put my finger on it, because otherwise it's a bit difficult to kind of get it into there without the yarn sliding off. So right needle under the yarn, put my finger on it, and then knit the next stitch. And knit to the end of the row. And then one more time the English way. So my yarn's in my right hand. So you hold the needle, there we go, needle behind the yarn, as long as you got, and then you go into the first stitch, knit it. Oops, oh, there's something wrong there. Okay, let's try it again. So you hold the yarn in front of the needle, go into the first stitch and knit that stitch, and then just make sure, whichever way you knit, that you just make sure you got the yarn over in front. Okay, and I'm going to knit the rest of the row the English way, sorry, the continental way, because that's what I'm best at. Okay, so you can see here now that we've done a few rows that you've got this loopy edging. You see that on both sides? And that's the loopy edging that you're going to pick up stitches in. So once I've now knitted a small triangle and I've cast off. Now as you're knitting, because you're doing garter stitch, every row basically looks the same. So, and because you cast on kind of at the bottom, you can't even use the cast on tail to tell you whether you're starting a right side row or a wrong side row. So if you're worried about getting confused about which row you're on, or you forget to count, what you can do is just put a removable marker, like that padlock marker, onto the right side. So whenever that's facing you and you're knitting from that side, whenever that's at the front of your knitting, when you start knitting, you know that that's your right side. It doesn't matter too much. But if you're worried about that, you can put some sort of marker or just a loop of yarn through that through the right side, just so you know which the right side is. Okay, so let's show you how you pick up stitches. So the pattern will tell you whether you're going to start from the right with the right side facing or the wrong side facing. Kind of doesn't matter too much, because both the right and the wrong side look the same really. Now can you see these loops here? These are the ones you're going to pick up, and I find it easier to just go through and pick up these loops first. Now the pattern will tell you how many loops you should pick up, and the reason I like to pick them up first is because I can count to make sure I've picked up all of them before I go back and knit them. So when you're picking up these loops, I like to go in from the back to the front. From the back to the front, back to 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 front. Because that way the stitches will sit on my needle with the leading leg at the front, just like a normal stitch does. And that means that when I knit it, it won't be twisted. You'll get these nice holes along your edging like that. Okay. So make sure that you pick the stitches up from back to front. And I like to pick up all the stitches first and then go back and knit them. If you use a circle needle, it's really easy, because you can pick them up and then you can just pull them across the other side of the needle to start knitting. So now you're going to also pick up one from the cast on edge. Now because you haven't got a yarn to pick up with, you can't use the tail to pick it up, by the way. You have to use the yarn you're going to knit with. I'm going to leave that one for now, and then I'm going to go around and do the other side. So Now this way you can also check before you start knitting that you've got the right number of stitches. Now I have got all my stitches there picked up, and then I can pull it back to the beginning, to the end I started picking up, so I'm ready to knit. That's the good thing about circular needles. You can start knitting from either end really. It's like a double pointed needle. Okay, so now we're going to knit this. Now this is just like knitting 3 yarn overs, where every stitch is a yarn over. So let's just see where that is. Okay, so I've got to knit that one first, and then I got the cast on stitch. So now I can pick up that stitch in the cast on stitch. Now I'm going to take that one off because it's in my way a little bit. You don't necessarily need a marker in the cast on stitch. I just like to have it so I can see exactly where I'm picking up. So that's the cast on stitch. So I'm going to pick up a stitch in that hole. Now I'm going to mark that stitch again because that's where I'm going to increase either side of that stitch later. So I'm going to leave that marker around that stitch just so I know for later, and then I'm going to knit, knit, knit. There we go. Okay, so I picked up those stitches, and then you just fold the pattern. Now on the next round you will need to do some increases because the stitches around this triangle isn't enough to actually make it lie completely flat, so there will be some increases in there as well, and obviously you would have to refer to the pattern. It depends on which needle size you're using. If you're using a bigger needle size for the edging, for the lace, you may need fewer increases, and also it depends on how open the lace pattern is, so do refer to your pattern. But that's the sort of basic quick guide to how to do the yarn overs at the beginning of the row for a shawl like my Capri shawl, and also how to pick up the stitches for the lace border. If you have any questions, do ask below or in the blog post that accompanies this video, or ask me on social media. I'm Yarn Addict Annie on Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest and Periscope, and my website is www.yarnaddict.co.uk, and I have a Facebook page which is Yarn Addict by Annie Canales. Thank you for watching.